Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. For 3 years, my connection with Clara was a true success story. Actually, it was more than that, it was amazing. You have to understand that as a corporate lawyer, my daily grind involves wading through the ugly side of humanity. People lie, cheat, and turn on each other in the most vicious ways imaginable. By the time I step out of the courthouse, I'm left with very little faith in humanity. But then I'd walk through the front door, and there she was, Clara. It was like someone had flung open a window in a room thick with smoke. She was sharp and witty and had a knack for quoting legal statutes as if they were song lyrics. She was a paralegal with ambitions that far exceeded my own. Honestly, she had this burning desire to attend law school, to rise through the ranks, and to establish a name for herself. I loved that about her. She wasn't just drifting along. She wanted more. And I was committed to being there for every step of her journey. We truly were a team, building something real together, not just for a photo on Instagram. For years, I had poured my heart and soul into restoring the house we shared. Every nail, every coat of paint, every floorboard I sanded down. I did it all because I was creating a home for us. This wasn't just about me paying bills for a girlfriend who liked trendy avocado toast. It was about me investing in the woman I was going to marry. That felt solid and real. But there was always a faint, buzzing noise in the background. You know that quiet static from a speaker you can't quite pinpoint? It wasn't loud enough to ruin the music, but it was just enough to drive you insane when you noticed it. That static had a name, Leo. He was her best friend from college, a supposedly harmless guy who was like a brother to her. Yet, this platonic soulmate of hers constantly hovered around our relationship like a smug, irritating satellite. He claimed to be a graphic designer, but in truth, he designed menus for local diners, treating cartoon jalapenos as if they were masterpieces. He'd say things like, "I just can't bring myself to sell my soul to corporate America. I'd rather be broke and free." And I'd retort, "Yes, Leo, we all admire your courage in the war against consistent income and dental insurance." Meanwhile, he was always behind on his rent. But of course, Clara would defend him as if he were a misunderstood genius. "He's just different, Julian. He doesn't care about money the way you do," she'd say. I would respond, "Right, because money is that pesky little thing needed for rent, food, or gas for the car he doesn't own because using Uber is more authentic." To her, he was a loyal protector, a rock from her college days. To me, he was a leech with a superiority complex the size of Texas. I swear, his full-time job was undermining our relationship. He was subtle about it, never saying anything I could directly challenge him on. He was a professional at this, sliding in his digs effortlessly. Wow, Julian. It must be exhausting working late and wearing suits all the time. I don't know how you manage it. Translation: your boyfriend is a soulless corporate robot, Clara. Or, this house is great, man. But doesn't it worry you that you spent years on one place when you could have been traveling and seeing the world? Translation: your boyfriend is a predictable homebody. Unlike me, the menu Picasso. These were little verbal poison darts disguised as compliments. He also loved bringing up her ex-boyfriend, Chris, a musician who had completely shattered her heart. It was as if Leo had a doctorate in "let's talk about Chris." If I took Clara on a lavish vacation to Mexico, covering all the flights and hotels, you could bet that Leo would find a way to interject with, "Remember that spontaneous camping trip we took once, Clara?" And he would say it in that dreamy, artistic voice you hear in cologne ads. You can't schedule moments like that, Clara. You just have to be with someone who gets your free spirit. Translation: Julian is boring. Julian is a safe choice. Julian wears a belt and probably pays his taxes on time. And the kicker? Clara would soak it all in, eyes sparkling, nodding along as if Leo were a modern-day Yoda. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there thinking, great, I'm up against a campfire, a pack of Esmores, and a guy who thinks deodorant is unnatural. Whenever I even hinted that Leo was overstepping, Clara would instantly become his defense attorney. "He's just being Leo, Julian. He was there for me when Chris broke my heart." I once shot back, and apparently Chris's betrayal was so profound that Leo has made it his life's mission to constantly remind you of it. She would give me that look, the one where her mouth tightens as if she's chewing on a lemon. "He's just worried about me. He's family, Julian." Family, I thought. Family doesn't try to ruin your relationship by going on about campfire smoke and free spirits. But fine, let's call it family. I'm a patient man. In my line of work, you don't jump on the first piece of evidence. You let them talk. You let them expose themselves. You let them build their entire case while you sit back and sharpen your pencil. And eventually, they hand you the rope to hang themselves with. So I waited. The moment I was waiting for arrived a month later. I had just closed the biggest case of my career. 6 months of my life were dedicated to it. Countless sleepless nights and weekends buried under mountains of paperwork. But it was worth it. We won. It was the kind of victory that makes the partners at the firm slap you on the back like you've just invented fire. It was a huge deal for the firm and for me. So, to celebrate, I decided to host a dinner party. It was just my closest friends, the people who had barely seen me for 6 months. And because I was still holding on to the idea of being the bigger person, I told Clara to invite her friends too. Which, of course, meant Leo was coming because apparently wherever Clara went, her clingy parasite went too. The night was perfect at first. The house was filled with laughter and warmth. I opened the expensive bottle of wine I'd been saving, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I was truly relaxing. Then, Leo entered, stage left, already helping himself to the free alcohol as if he'd been raised in a vineyard. After just 2 glasses, he was swaggering around my house as if he had a stake in the mortgage. And then, as if the universe wanted to test me, he decided it was time for a monologue. He launched into a lengthy story about an art exhibit he had seen. Spoilers, it wasn't about the exhibit. No, it was about Leo, as always. He went on and on about the difference between creators and suits. It's just a different way of seeing the world, he said, looking right at me. Right, because I'm the guy who wears a tie, so I must be incapable of seeing the world. I just count money like Scrooge McDuck. He added, some of us are driven by passion, by art. Others are more practical. Then, as if to make his point, he took a slow, theatrical sip of my wine, like he was auditioning for a villain in a soap opera. I saw my friends watching him, their faces twisted as if they had just licked a lemon. One of them mouthed, "Who invited this guy?" And I had to stop myself from pointing at Clara. I gave him a tight, professional smile, the kind that says, I'd love nothing more than to destroy you in front of a jury, but tonight I'm choosing to be civil. But Leo wasn't finished. He never is. He turned to Clara, putting on his concerned friend face that he probably practices in the mirror between designing taco menus. I just hope you're happy, Clara, he said, his voice dripping with the kind of fake sincerity that could drown a small animal. And then he looked at me with that saintly little half-grin. I mean, Julian's a great guy. He's stable. He's a provider. He's reliable. He said reliable like it was an insult, as if I had just been accused of tax fraud. Then came the pause. He turned back, locked eyes with me, and let that smug smirk spread across his face. But you've got to admit, he said, milking the moment for all it was worth. She could do a lot better than you. There it was. He had finally handed me the rope, and I was more than ready to tie the knot. The entire table fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop, or, in Leo's case, the sound of his last 2 brain cells rattling around. My friends were shifting in their seats as if they were physically holding themselves back from jumping across the table. Clara just stared at her plate, her cheeks flushed, not with anger, but with embarrassment that he had created a scene, as if the problem was his delivery, not the fact that he had tried to humiliate me in my own dining room. That was the moment the switch flipped. My focus became crystal clear. The patient lawyer was gone. The guy who let witnesses ramble was dead and buried. What they got now was the man who had just been fundamentally disrespected in his own home, in front of his friends, by a freeloader. I slowly set my fork and knife down. I folded my hands on the table, leaned back slightly, and locked eyes with him. The friendly host had officially left the building. In his place was the prosecutor, and court was now in session. That's a bold claim, Leo, I said. My voice was dangerously quiet, the kind of quiet that makes a jury lean in. I'm interested in your reasoning. He blinked, the confident smirk gone, replaced by the look of a deer caught in headlights. In your expert opinion, I continued, what does a better man for Clara look like? Please be specific. Lay out the criteria for me. Leo looked as if he had been given an exam for a class he never attended. Well, he stammered. Someone who's more on her level, a creative, someone who gets her. I nodded slowly, like a judge taking notes. I see. So the main qualification is being a creative. Interesting theory. I tilted my head, giving him that lawyer's smile that says, go on, dig a deeper hole. And I assume you see yourself as fitting this description? I think I understand her better than anyone, he said, puffing out his chest. Perfect, I said, my hands now folded even tighter. So you're the gold standard. Let's examine that. Let's add a few other factors to this analysis, I said, leaning back as if I had all the time in the world. Let's talk about something more concrete than vibes. I made air quotes around the word, just so no one missed the sarcasm. Let's talk about investment. Leo stared at me blankly. As everyone here knows, Clara is in her 2nd year of law school, a top-tier program with a steep price tag, and I'm paying for it, the whole thing. Not student loans, not scholarships. Me. It's a major investment of capital. Sure, but more importantly, it's an investment of faith in her and our future together. I let the words hang in the air. So my question for you, Leo, as the self-appointed gold standard for what's better for Clara, Is this? What have you invested in her future lately, besides your consistently negative opinions of me? Leo's face drained of all color. Clara shot me a panicked look, whispering, Julian, don't do this. I didn't even look at her, just held up a hand to silence her. I'm not done, I said, my voice steady and sharp. I finally snapped my gaze to her for a moment. You need to be quiet right now, I told her, holding up a finger like a teacher scolding a student. You were completely silent when your precious Leo was trying to humiliate me in front of everyone. You sat there watching like it was a free episode of reality TV. So don't even think about opening your mouth while I finally ask him the questions he's been too cowardly to answer. Fair's fair, Clara. You gave him the stage. Now you'll give me the mic. She froze, her lips parted, but nothing came out. I turned back to Leo, my smirk daring him to squirm. Now the room was completely silent. My friends were practically salivating. This was better than anything on Netflix. Let's talk about the car she drives, I continued, cool as ever. It's safe, reliable, and gets her to school without a problem. I bought it for her. I let that sink in. Now you have a car too, right, Leo? A cool little convertible that seems to break down more often than it runs. Very artsy. Very avant-garde. I paused just long enough to watch him squirm. In fact, Clara has had to loan you money for repairs at least 3 times in the last 6 months, hasn't she? Money that she took from the household account, which, by the way, I'm the only one who puts money into. So, in a very real sense, Leo, I'm not just investing in Clara's future. I'm also paying to keep your little hipster mobile on the road. I gave him a razor-sharp smile. You're welcome. One of my friends couldn't hold back a snort of laughter. Leo's jaw tightened, and his eyes darted to Clara for backup, but she wouldn't look at him. And finally, I said, leaning forward, my voice dropping to a low tone that made everyone lean in, let's talk about this house, the roof over her head. I own it, I said evenly, my eyes never leaving Leo's face. I fix the things that break. You, on the other hand, have been so behind on your rent that Clara has had to cover for you. Again, with money that I earned. I leaned back, steepling my fingers like a professor delivering his final lecture. So let me just summarize your argument for the jury. Sorry. Slip of the tongue. I mean for the table. My friends shifted, barely suppressing grins. They knew where this was going. Your position, Leo, is that a man who provides a stable home, a reliable car, and a fully funded top-tier education is somehow the inferior choice for Clara. And that a better man, by your definition, is a financial black hole who drains her resources and repays her kindness by systematically trying to sabotage her relationship out of what can only be described as a pathetic, transparent, and deeply creepy obsession. I paused for a dramatic effect, letting the words hang in the air like a closing argument. Is that a fair and accurate summary of your position, Leo? He blinked, his mouth opening as if to speak, then closing again. He was a fish gasping for air. I tilted my head and smiled coldly. But maybe I've made it too complicated for you. Legal terms, big words, logic, those aren't really your strong suits, are they? Let me simplify things. The entire table leaned in. My friends knew what was coming. Leo had no idea. Here's the breakdown, Leo, I said, ticking points off on my fingers. You don't have a house. You don't have a consistent place to live unless Clara bails you out. You don't have money for rent or car repairs. She's been patching your life together with my paycheck. I let that sink in before going for the kill. You don't have a stable job. Designing taco menus might be art in your head, but out here in the real world, it's not enough to support yourself, let alone Clara. You can't fund her dreams. You can't back her ambitions. You can't even cover your own gas money without her pity. In short, you're a loser, a jealous little parasite clinging to people who actually build something in this world. Leo's face was draining faster than the wine in his glass. And that, I added, leaning forward now, my voice dark and sharp, is what this is really about, isn't it? You hate successful people because every time you see one, it reminds you of what you'll never be. So you try to humiliate them, undermine them, and pretend you're above it all while you're drinking the wine I paid for, under the roof I restored, in the house I own, at the table I set. I sat back, letting the silence cut like a blade. That's who you are, Leo. Not Clara's protector. Not her soulmate. Not some misunderstood genius. Just a bitter, broke man-child trying to drag her down so she never notices she's outgrown you. The silence that followed was glorious. Leo couldn't answer. He sat there like a man whose soul had just been repossessed. He stared down at his wine glass as if it might offer him legal counsel. He was done, a broken witness shredded on the stand. I glanced around the table. My friends were all glaring at him with open contempt. One of them muttered under his breath, "Christ, what a clown." Then I looked at Clara. Her face was a storm. Shock, embarrassment, and panic flickered across it. But the one emotion that hit me squarely in the chest wasn't relief or gratitude. It was pure, white-hot fury. She shot up from her chair, the legs scraping violently against the floor. Her entire body was shaking, as if I had just insulted a saint instead of exposing her freeloading friend. "I cannot believe you just did that," she hissed, her voice a mix of outrage and melodrama. "You humiliated him in front of everyone." I sipped my wine and leaned back in my chair. "He already humiliated himself, Clara. I just presented the evidence. He supplied the crimes. I just read the indictment." Her eyes became volcanic. "Apologize to him," she demanded, jabbing a finger at me. "Right now. Apologize to my best friend for what you just did. Apologize or we are over." And there it was, the ultimatum, delivered with all the drama of a soap opera cliffhanger. I looked over at Leo, who was still sitting there, broken, swirling the wine I paid for. This was the man she was defending. The man who couldn't pay his rent without her bailing him out, who thought career goals meant being upright for more than 4 hours a day. She was standing next to the smoldering wreckage of a man who had just been exposed as a manipulative parasite, and she was defending him, choosing him. The love I had for her didn't just fade away. It was executed swiftly and cleanly, like a mob hit. I didn't get mad. I didn't yell. I just smiled. A small, sad, and completely final smile. The kind you give a kid who insists that Santa Claus pays the rent. Then I said, as calm as a judge reading a verdict, "All right then, I guess we're done. You know the way out of here. And take this loser with you." Without another word, I stood up, picked up my wine glass, which, by the way, was the good bottle, my bottle, and walked into the kitchen, leaving her in the silent dining room with her pet project of a human. The case was closed. The verdict was in. Part 3. Clara was both shocked and furious. She stormed out, grabbing Leo like a woman rescuing a wounded puppy, and together they made their dramatic exit in a cloud of melodrama. She moved in with him that night. I'm sure it was a decision made in the heat of her rage and his humiliation. In her mind, she had thrown down the gauntlet. She was daring me to grovel, to crawl, to beg for her forgiveness like some Shakespearean fool. She wanted the scene where I showed up at their rundown apartment, rain pouring down, shouting her name from the street like a cheap movie hero. She had no idea that I had simply accepted her terms. For 2 weeks, I went completely dark. I didn't answer her calls. I didn't reply to the barrage of texts that started with anger, turned to confusion, and finally became pitifully pleading. I had booked myself a real vacation. Sunshine, poolside drinks, and absolutely zero arguments with anyone who thought a guy without a job and a working car was a viable life partner. I took photos of myself sipping cocktails by the beach, not to post, but as a reminder to me. This is what peace looks like. Some of our mutual friends called while I was away, but instead of pleading Clara's case, they were firmly on my side. "Honestly, man, you did the right thing," one said. "Yeah, she'll figure it out eventually," another added. "Right now, she's playing house with Leo, but give it time. She'll realize she traded a steak for instant noodles." I just laughed, ordered another drink, and thought, maybe she will, maybe she won't. Either way, not my problem. I was a ghost, a very well-dressed, gainfully employed, happily drinking expensive wine ghost. Instead of chasing her, I went to work. My house, which had felt like our home, now felt like a crime scene. Not the bloody kind, but one of those financial crimes where someone's been laundering feelings through your furniture. So I did what any sane executive would do. I handled the estate of our dead relationship. Methodically, coldly, with receipts. I spent an entire weekend boxing up her belongings. Every sweater, every throw pillow, every book she pretended to read but never opened. I wasn't angry. It was a cleansing, a purge. It was like Marie Kondo with sharper teeth. Does this bring me joy? I'd ask myself, holding up one of her decorative candles. Nope, I'd answer, tossing it into the box like a judge dropping a gavel. When I was done, I stacked the boxes neatly in a spare room, her own little museum of bad decisions. I changed all the locks and reset the security codes. Then I made 2 phone calls. They weren't pleasant, but they were necessary, the logical consequences of the verdict she had delivered at that dinner party. The first call was to the dean of admissions at her law school. I had a good relationship with him from my alumni work. He answered on the second ring as cheerful as ever. "Julian, good to hear from you. What can I do for you?" "Well, Dean, this isn't exactly the kind of call either of us enjoys," I said, keeping my tone as professional as a boardroom meeting. "Due to, let's call it, a permanent change in my personal circumstances, the private scholarship fund I had established for Clara is being dissolved, effective immediately." There was a pause. "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Is everything all right?" "Oh, everything's peachy," I replied, smiling even though he couldn't see it. "Just a matter of reallocating resources. You know how it is. Sometimes the market shifts. Sometimes people turn out to be soap opera villains. One adjusts accordingly." He cleared his throat politely. "Understood." Click. That was that. The second call was to the managing partner at my firm. I had twisted myself into knots to land Clara a summer internship there. A spot that would have catapulted her career faster than you can say, billable hours. He picked up sounding busy, which was perfect. Julian, what's up? I'm about to head into a meeting. It won't take long, I said. We have a severe and irreconcilable conflict of interest. The internship offer extended to Clara needs to be rescinded immediately. There was a moment of silence. Then he chuckled as if he thought I was joking. Rescinded? That's unusual. Everything okay? Oh, sure, I said, leaning back in my chair. If okay means I discovered that the intern I was sponsoring decided to play musical chairs with boyfriends and housing arrangements. It creates, let's just say, insurmountable difficulties in mentorship. He laughed awkwardly. Well, if that's the case, that is precisely the case. I cut in, sharp but cheerful. You know me, I hate paperwork. But I'd rather deal with HR forms than have the firm host its very own live-action soap opera. By the end of the day, 2 doors that I had opened for her were neatly, quietly shut. No slamming, just a very polite, very final click. I took no joy in this, but my support for her was based on the foundation of our partnership. She had taken a sledgehammer to that foundation. She could no longer live in the house. Exactly 2 weeks after the dinner, she showed up at my door. I watched the entire performance on the security camera like a low-budget reality TV episode. First, she tried her key. Fumble, jiggle, rattle, click. Nothing. She tried again, her frustration building. By the 3rd attempt, she looked like she was trying to break into her own home. That's when the light bulb went off in her head. Oh right, keys don't work when you've been fired from the role of girlfriend. Then came the anger, blooming across her face like a time-lapse video of a flower. And finally, defeat. She rang the bell. I opened the door but left the chain on. It's always good to have a barrier when your ex looks like she's on the verge of a meltdown. She looked awful. The righteous fury was gone, replaced by worn-out desperation. Julian, we need to talk, she said. I gave her a polite smile. No, Clara, we don't. She blinked. You can't just throw away 3 years over one fight. Tears were already welling up, which was impressive speed. One fight. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. No, sweetheart, that wasn't a fight. That was a moment of truth. You were given a clear choice. Your partner and provider of 3 years, or the man who's been trying to sabotage us since day one. And what did you do? You demanded I apologize to him. You don't bite the hand that feeds you. I leaned a little closer through the chain, lowering my voice. You chose to defend the parasite. That's not something I forget. The panic started crawling up her face as she realized I wasn't softening. She tried again, her voice cracking. But everything we planned, law school, the internship. Oh, I cut in smoothly. About that. I let the silence hang there like a noose. Her eyes darted, searching, already knowing she wasn't going to like the next words. The tuition for your final semester is due next week, isn't it? I asked, my tone as casual as if I were asking about the weather. I really hope you and Leo have a plan for that, because my, let's call it, investment in our future has been terminated. Her face went white. What? She whispered. And the internship at my firm, I continued relentlessly. That offer has been rescinded. The firm takes conflicts of interest very seriously. She actually stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth, as if I had just told her oxygen was being discontinued. The internship was her golden ticket, her one-way ride to the magical land of power suits and billable hours. And just like that, poof, gone. You can't do that, she whispered, her voice breaking like a cheap wine glass. Julian, please, you can't. I already have, I said, folding my arms. Actions have consequences, remember? You gave me an ultimatum. Apologize or we're over. Well, I chose over. And now you get to live with the consequences. Go ask Leo for help. You know, the man who's so much better than me. I'm sure his creative genius includes a 12-step plan for paying your $50,000 tuition and replacing the career you just lost. Maybe it involves interpretive dance or finger painting. Can't wait to see the business model. She choked out a sob, and I closed the door on her tear-streaked face. And here's the thing. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I just felt quiet, as if the trial were finally over and the verdict had been delivered. The aftermath was entirely predictable. Clara's life fell apart like a cheap IKEA shelf. She had to drop out of law school just months from graduating. The dream? Dead. And she and Leo? They're apparently still living together in his tiny apartment. I've heard from friends that it's a special kind of hell. Evidently, Clara is now marinating in resentment, blaming Leo for the tuition she lost, the internship she'll never get back, and the fact that her life trajectory went from future legal eagle to permanent passenger in his rust bucket car. And poor Leo? He's stuck living with a woman who is essentially a human reminder that he won the prize, only to discover the prize was broken, bitter, and came with monthly student loan bills that could bankrupt a small country. The irony is delicious. He got the girl, sure, but he got the lemon version. No warranty, no refund, all issues included. Meanwhile, every time she glares at him, he's reminded that his big moment at that dinner party was the equivalent of spiking the ball at the 1-yard line. I'd almost feel sorry for him if I weren't too busy laughing into my whiskey. And let me be clear, I didn't do this for revenge. That would imply I spent nights plotting her downfall, cackling like a cartoon villain. No, this was simpler, cleaner, almost boring in its logic. I did it for myself. A relationship at its core is a contract. She violated the most fundamental clause, loyalty. You don't walk into court with Exhibit A, your smug boyfriend, and expect me to keep paying your retainer. My actions weren't punishment. Punishment is what you give a dog when it chews your shoe. This was enforcement of terms. She wanted to toss around ultimatums like some rookie lawyer testing her first cross-examination. Well, I took her up on it. She asked what done really means. And now she knows. It means the scholarship evaporates. The internship vanishes. The roof over your head disappears. It means the investment ends, the checks stop coming, and the builder, the guy who was literally constructing your future brick by brick, packs up his tools and walks off the job site. And what's left? Just you, standing ankle-deep in the smoldering wreckage of the house you helped burn. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. See you next time.